Father, we just thank you and praise you for having this opportunity again to share about your Torah and where we are at with this and how appropriate it is for the time that we're living in, Father. And Father, you always want us to see that you are in control and that you are in charge. So we just pray that, Father, that you would just strengthen us to actually see that you are the King. And no matter what our circumstances are, you remain on your throne, and that we can trust you and reach out to you, Father, because you desire a relationship with us. And as we have seen in these Torah portions, that even Yosef, when he was in prison, still knew that you were there and rose up above his circumstances. And we're starting to see the rest of that story right here. So we just thank you again for this time, Father, and we pray that those who listen will be blessed. And humbly we humbly submit our tongue and our mouths to speak forth your truth, Father. Uh, if there's anything that comes out of our mouths that's not of you, let it just fly away, Father. But those things that come from you, let them take root and let them be planted in soil that will be sufficient to grow. We lift this all up in your son's name, Yeshua HaMashiach. Amen.
I mean,
Man. Yeah, so here we are. We find ourselves. Thank you, Zephania. And Brian, I wanted to just mention to you, I think you raised your hand there, of being
uh
in adapting and I just want to kind of make the observation as many of us perhaps are like Joseph, hidden among our brothers, um, that when we reveal ourselves, I want to kind of touch on that because I think you've had quite a bit of a revealing, of that being uncovered for you, and kind of there's a bit of a challenging thing when you're faced with this responsibility now. It's not just hey, I've got this information I want to share with people, and it's like now now a responsibility. So what I would just wanted to ask you, like, what's it been like for you being revealed as part of that, the kind of like Joseph, all of a sudden you're like, wow, things being revealed to me, and now your family and friends around you are having to cope with and deal with, like, oh my gosh, this is much deeper, right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, especially these last couple of days as to what's been going on with the big holidays and things like that. So, I think they kind of know what what I've come to learn and what I'm doing, and whether they come to my home, they see things that I have up on the mantle or whatever, or they see my post on Facebook or what have you, or if we're having a meal together and I'm asked to pray, I pray a little bit differently. Um, but as far as I mean, my wife knows what I've been able to discover, and she's glad, and you know um, she's very happy that I've been so entrenched in the word. Um, but as far as these holidays, I mean, I just have to, it's all new for my family, that for them to seeing me this way. So it's not going to just happen. It's just not going to happen like that on a whim. So you kind of just gotta go with the flow, and there are certain things that I'll avoid, and some things where I'm kind of, it kind of slips. I'll say something, and I'll, like, but what do? It's gotta extend grace, like I've been extended grace. So
Hmm.
um, no one's gonna live. I don't think anybody's gonna live out Torah perfectly, other than one person. So, but I do love it. I mean, I sat in my bed the other day. I took a nap, yeah, and I was just thinking how it's, you know, looking at everything on TV and the marketing, and just what's going on. Everybody's focused on a couple of things, and it's not so much. It's not even Messiah. It's barely even mentioned. And it's like it's kind of upsetting, and it saddens me a little bit. But I gotta just hold my tongue and just give what do you do?
Yeah.
It's
Right.
it's upsetting. It's upsetting, but they'll I pray that they're gonna get it. They'll come to know at some point. And just like this parashah today, it's just awesome how Joseph he found it so hard to contain himself. He wanted to reveal himself, to his brothers, because he's been out in the world like us. He's been out in the world and in Egypt. So, I was hoping to hear Ephraim and Ramon Frank's perspective on this parashah, but maybe we'll get some of that next week. Next week's going to be next week's going to be a good parashah. My favorite scripture, 48:19.
That's good. That's good, and thank you for sharing that. And Zephaniah, I guess you've seen over the years, things have been revealed to you, right? And just from a personal note, I think that and probably maybe you could relate to this, that we start seeing opportunities that once we've been in this for a while, or perhaps we're a little more seasoned in some of these areas, that the Almighty starts setting up kind of these divine appointments with people that we wouldn't otherwise ask for or seek ourselves, right? And so,
Oh yeah.
what do you think about that? That maybe it's around the time that people are off of work and they're usually have some kind of a meal together, but then all of a sudden he sets up something for us. So, share a little bit about that if you could, and just kind of some of the divine appointments that could happen, that these are opportunities that we have,
Yeah, I would just say that, and this is what has plagued uh, our people, is that as we come into the revelation of these truths that we're starting to walk in, it does not mean that now you have the license to bash somebody and to tear them down for what they're doing. It does not mean that at all. And so we had an interesting opportunity for us, is that there's an older couple that lives near us, and they invited us to come for dinner, or kind of a lot between lunch and dinner kind of time period, on the 25th, yesterday, right? And we didn't turn it down. And what happened is that it was very low key. There was not any commercial discussion. There was not any uh, gift giving. There was not a Christmas tree even. There was not one of those things either. Uh, they had some cards they got from family that were up and that type of thing. But we discussed scripture. We had a meal and we discussed scripture. And regardless of when you believe that he was born, we know that he was born. Period. And so you can discuss that at any time
Mhm.
of year. And if it happens to be on your heart during this time, okay, well, let's discuss it, and let's look at who he is, who he said he was. And we started looking at the genealogies, and was making comments, planting some seeds, and that type of thing. And maybe the husband's at 85, and the wife is in her 70s, and maybe they won't get to the point where they will understand the things that we would understand. But what they realize is that those of us who are walking in this, we are gracious, we are loving, and we are compassionate people. That's what we need to plant. Those are the seeds we need to plant, and that's what they saw. And
Mm-hmm.
before we left, we gave them a big hug, and and they really were blessed that we were there,
Mm-hmm.
and so just had a real good time.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. There, I was on mute there. Thank you.
Yeah.
So this is for those who just joined us. This is a First Century Torah Talk. We are now able to get on to various platforms. We're on YouTube, and we're also on Facebook. For those who are watching, so you have several links there where you could join. I'm here joined with Zephaniah Pappas and Brian Sanchez, and see perhaps next week we'll have Fran Ramona back on. They join when they can, and obviously they're 8 hours ahead, and I'm sure they've had some interesting fellowship times. And I'll just say, there's a couple of things spiritually I want to look at, because I think because of this time of year, we can't ignore it, and we also can't pretend like it's not significant for people, right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Why, when you're December 26th is kind of like the uh, a lot of funny posts from Torah observant people, messianic believers are like, oh, finally it's over, and like, well, you could look at it like that, and I think it's probably easy in the natural realm to look at it like, oh my gosh, Christmas is already over. Okay, well, hold on a second. I think that if you take a step back and you look at the opportunity historically to segue in saying, well, you want to celebrate the birth, how about you celebrate something just as significant, the conception? Because this is the time, during Hanukkah, and during the winter time, was when the
Hmm.
conception happened. And how do we know this? Go to Luke chapter 1. Look at the timeline. It's pretty simple to break down. When Zacharias was serving in his the division of Abiyah, okay, that was in the third month, which is in the summertime. So then, 6 months later, we see Elizabeth and Mary having their interaction. Well, what that brings us to around the wintertime, right? So there's all these things. You match up the timeline. You're going, well, he most likely was conceived in the winter. 9 months from now, 9.5 months from now is Sukkot. It's a fall feast. So there's all these different things you can match together and say, well, you want to have a historical discussion, and you want to have a discussion about the significance of Messiah. Let's do it. Just like Stefania said, let's have a Bible study about it. Let's read Luke chapter 1, and then go reference Chronicles, where it talks about the division of Abiyah that Zacharias, the priest, was a part of, and you just do what we're supposed to be doing as believers. And that's the encouragement I give, because you're still going to have these discussions, and a lot of people who may be falling into some of the I call it some of the pep rally nonsense. You're on this team and they're on that team, and there's just like this pep rally against one another. It's not productive.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
could look at it and say, look, you may not choose to do some of these customs, whether it be Yuletide and Saturnalia, whatever whatever terms they've been labeled now. And but there are more and more people, because of the internet, who are getting exposed to the truth. They're getting exposed to little short videos and documentaries about the origins of it, and they're trying to distance themselves from the commercial parts of it, right? They're trying to get more into the biblical part, and it's really hard. But if you look even the Bible stories, when it says the shepherds weren't in the field, well, because it was wintertime, and in the whole situation, where we have a scenario now where the birth of Yeshua has turned into something that really should be more centered around the death of Yeshua and the resurrection. This is where you kind of say, like, well, why aren't we talking about Yeshua and him crucified or him executed and resurrected more than we are talking about his birth? And the Feast of Tabernacles, we had that opportunity, right, to get into that. So I will also last say, before we get into this parsha, whenever the messenger came to Zacharias the priest and told him what was going to happen, and there was disobedience there, what was the result of Zacharias? He went mute, right? He can no longer speak. And I believe that's maybe more of a prophetic warning to those of us who are instructed to do things during this time, that we not go mute, that we not be silenced because of disobedience, because of bitterness, because of resentment, because of wanting to push our newfound revelation onto others, that not in a graceful way, not in a loving way.
Right.
It's incredibly hard. It's one of those things when you look at some of the landmine issues of faith, family, and finances. Any of those three subjects, when you're dealing with people, there's probably going to be a bit of a struggle with faith, family, and finances. And you look at someone's faith, you look at how they manage their money, and you look at how they manage their family traditions. Watch out. So if you already know those are landmine issues, and you already know, I highly encourage people to get a good map. And the only map that you're going to use during this time are the scriptures. So just remember that this faith, family, and finances are landmine issues, no matter how you slice it. Even among Torah people, now you start talking about Torah people, and they start talking about what do you observe. There's even lots of division among Hanukkah. Oh, you shouldn't be doing Hanukkah because it's not in the Torah. Like, okay, well, there's a lot of things that aren't in the Torah. You know, I jokingly say, well, you know, Jerusalem isn't in the Torah technically. It's not until afterward, and so there's those kind of things that you can get so extreme and so hyper focused on some things that even among Torah people there's division. And Zafanya, I'm sure you can attest to that. And I think Brian, you're starting to see that that even if when you come out of these traditions, you could still see like, it's not over.
Oh no,
Because
no,
the, you
yeah.
know,
I saw several posts over the last month or so about Hanukkah from Torah people
yeah.
it was about Herod's it was something for King Herod.
Herod, right? And then there's things about Purim, about you know, things against Mordecai and against the Book of Esther, and how like it's not, you know, I'm like, okay, there's I've seen protests on those things, and I say, look, if it really makes that big of a difference to you to not do it, then don't do it. But if you're offered opportunities like I have had over the last 20 years to gather with brethren during those times and have a fantastic prophetic scriptural study during Purim, especially this prophetic significance of it coming up, you embrace it and you go, yeah, this is great. Why wouldn't you? So anyway, I know we can probably go on all day on that those subjects, but here, for those who joined, we are discussing Vayigash, which means and he approached from Genesis 44:18 to 47:27 roughly. And again, you know, the way that these Torah portions are broken up from the time, you know, probably 2,500 years ago, and then here of late when mankind broke it up into chapter and verses. Okay, so now we have chapter and verses to deal with, and so this the way its story, you know, ends. It's a pretty good place, you know, marker before the next portion, which goes into the end of Genesis. So with that, you know, some of the talking points is real basic. Vayigash. So we see Judah's sacrifice. Judah is in a situation now in the story where Benjamin has been arrested and found out that he was the one who had the cup. Obviously, it was planted. And then you see that Judah is offering himself as a sacrifice. And we see that there are some messianic parallels there of Yeshua offering himself for us. We see Joseph reveals himself. There's some significance there onto how he does that and the timeline of that. And then we've got Jehovah speaks to Israel. There is a prophetic word that Jehovah speaks to Jacob, to Israel, in chapter 46 that I'd like to read and highlight because it's something a little more significant than when people think. And then we've got, obviously, Israel comes down to Egypt with this is where they count the 70. And then the famine continues on in the land of Egypt. And there's some transactions that go on there that I've always been curious about. I want to get your thoughts on that, guys, on the transactions that Joseph conducted there. And then the question that comes up every week is what does this mean for us today? And you know, many of our insights into this story, I believe, you know, growing up, this is just my observation. I don't know, Zephaniah, you can maybe attest to this, that just as Joseph has been hidden from his brothers, there's just been for me in a very significant piece of the scriptures, this being towards the end of Genesis, has been concealed from a lot of the believers who are indeed, consider themselves, as followers of Yeshua or believers in Yeshua. You know, we see that this piece of scripture has been so kept from us that you say, well, why isn't anyone talking about this? You know, why isn't anyone talking about how, you know, who Joseph is, and that we're not talking about just, this is the story of the Jews. We're like, no, clearly we're seeing the Judah being of the, that's where the Jewish people came from. And then Joseph, well, who are Joseph? And that's, became known as the Ephraim, or the house of Israel. And just like in Brian's, we'll see here in a bit when he comes back, we'll see Brian's tree, where it talks about Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, and then it breaks off into Judah and Ephraim, or Joseph. And so, because it's so rich with identity, that this whole thing has been really it's been a really challenging thing coming into this, because it takes more than just a literal, superficial understanding of Scripture. So, Fania, what do you think about that? When you first learned about Joseph and the significance of it as a believer. Did you feel maybe a little bit like, why isn't anyone else talking about this among the religious circles that we grew up in?
Um, yeah, I remember seeing the story of Joseph, and I don't know if I really totally, I can't recall if I totally really asked those types of questions at that time, but I could tell that it was a significant story, and yet was not really, it wasn't really framed in such a way that it was significant at all. So
Mm.
I guess I can say that, but whether you know to what degree I saw of it, its importance, I'm not really. That's so many years ago right now for me. So
Right. Right. What about you, Brian? Or if you could call the question that, this we're talking initially about Joseph and the understanding of him now, how, maybe it's a little more fresh in your mind as far as the significance of it not really being discussed or examined as much as the New Testament is, right? Um, what has this revelation about who Joseph is, kind of like I guess if you were to share the tree behind you, once you figured out the genealogies and who Joseph and Ephraim and Judah are, what's that been for you as far as your approach to Scripture now?
Well, well, I was telling you the other day about the book from Badia Wooten, who is Israel, about getting that book from my dad. Um, I mean, to put it simple, I mean, it just the whole come to realization of what the identity is for Joseph or us, Ephraim. It just puts the whole context of the Bible, the whole plan of God. It's easy to understand. It clicks. Well, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say easy to understand. Maybe some it's going to be really like a head scratcher, but for me, it just puts everything into perspective. Of it's like, okay, now I got it. This makes sense now. I mean, it's just unbelievable revelation. Um, it's not just a matter of, okay, well, I believe in Jesus and I'm saved, I'm gonna go to heaven, and that's it. you know, there's like so much more that he's got planned for us, and to reunite two brothers, two houses into one again. And this is like I said, this parashah is perfect. I mean, I told my dad, I said, read this, test it. It's got scripture references. Look at the Bible, because he's been reading the Bible lately. He was born and raised Catholic, and and this book, I said, Dad, this is gonna tell the whole story. Not a story. I hate to use the word story, because not a story. This is real time. These are historical events, and this is the plan for the end of the age. And it's not just, first of all, there's no going to heaven and floating in the clouds and playing a harp. The kingdom is here, and you're going to get it. So that's how I put it in a nutshell. There is something here. It's not just casual belief, like you go to Sunday service, and there's a couple of scriptures we share, and they make you feel good, and there's a lot. We got to understand this.
Wow, that is significant. It's great. I think you've got an opportunity, obviously, with people and reaching out and sharing this type of truth. Um, I'll guess I know what you mean by saying it's easy to understand. Here's what happens. It kind of reminds me of growing up, and I've used this analogy with different people. I don't know if those of you, I'm sure, who watch different movies or series of movies, right, or TV episodes, just pick your favorite one, right? And I kind of take it as like like a movie trilogy. There's tons of them out there. I don't need to name any specifically, but it just feels like we've been watching part 3 of the trilogy for so long and expected to just know the backstory of all the characters and the events that led up to part 3 of a story, right? And you say, all right, well, New Testament's kind of like that. New Testament's kind of like part 3 in the trilogy. And the middle and the beginning are kind of like, well, you just have to kind of rely on little references in part 3 to kind of know what part 2 and part 1 meant.
Mm-hmm.
So reading Genesis is like watching part 1. You're like, oh, that's what this means. These are these characters are. The genealogies are laid out right there. So when you're reading the book of Matthew, and then Matthew starts off with the genealogies of all these people, you're like, why is it even listing this? Like, why is the book of Matthew going out of its way? Why is Matthew going out of his way to list all these people that happens to reference? So if you've noticed in this parsha, I believe it's chapter 46 that lists the genealogies of the families that came up of Jacob that came up with him to down to Egypt. And I'm like, okay, well, it lists that for a reason. Then Matthew lists it for a reason to show you where the messianic bloodline came from, right? And so little things like that I think that for many I have known that it's not necessarily it's an easy scripturally to understand, but it certainly flips the light on and goes, well, hey, wait, I can actually see where this stuff came from. And you're not so much in the dark with it. So when you start going, you're going, all right, now I know who Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob are. I know who Jacob's wives are. I know his sons. I know who they are. Now I know where the tribes of Israel came from. And then you start drilling down, going, now I know who this Ephraim is referenced all through the prophets. Now I know who the whole book of Hosea is written to. You know, that's always been kind of repositioned as, oh, it's just the Jewish people. I was just written to the Jews. And it's such a like a blanket statement. You go, we've been told to believe this for so long. Now we're like, wait, this changes everything. And so as we go into Joseph revealing himself to his brothers, I want to get your thoughts on this. As we go into, hold on one second here, 45.
I also think Elohim, I think he knew the house of Israel would do this, and we would eventually get to the point to where we're going to start ignoring the first half of the book and start at the end of the book. So I think he knew this was going to happen. That's why you have the genealogies beginning from Matthew 1. I think he kind of knew that was going to happen. I think the book of James also too, doesn't it start where he addresses the 12 tribes?
Yeah, that's a little complicated for some people, because for those who want to say Israel's been replaced or that the tribes are lost and they're never going to be found again, and my question to them is, okay, well then why did James feel so compelled to address the 12? Because they were so lost. They're not lost. He revealed it.
Yeah, I've heard that many times where this section is for the Jews only, and this section is for Matthew 24 is definitely not for the church. It's for the Jews, because that's all about the day of the Lord. It's pretty scary. So surely that can't be for the church. That's got to be for the church. So it's like that's a lot of scriptures. That's a lot of books and chapters that are just for the Jews. Apparently, I mean, it's crazy.
Right? No. Yeah, once you get rid of the us and them mentality and you realize we are one family,
yeah,
a lot of the doctrine stuff you can't bring it into the kingdom. The doctrine, it's like the doctrine stuff just dries up. You go, I'm sorry, you can't even use this. It becomes like fiat money. It's like it's make believe. It's like, okay, you could take these documents, these doctrinal statements, put them onto a wall and go, this is our statement of faith. And you could read it all day long, but it's essentially just a house of cards. And you go, now it's crumbling down. It's crashing down pretty hard for people now, because you can't use that argument anymore. It's pretty obvious now that Joseph has been revealed to many people, especially to those who were in the pews are going, wait, they have this now an Israelite or Hebrew identity that you can't just shake. Now it's the Holy Spirit waking people up. Over the last, at least over the last 10 years, you hear more and more stories of people prophetically waking up going, no one spoke to them, no one gave them a pamphlet, no one converted them to some religion, that they felt the Spirit move them to study Genesis. The Spirit has been moving them into this awakening of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and this understanding. So here quickly, I'll just say, in chapter 45, as we go into we already talked about Judah offering himself as a sacrifice, just like Yeshua offered himself for us. And we see that during the interaction with Judah and Joseph, it's very, very specific, right? Judah and Joseph interacting. Chapter 45 says, then Joseph could not control himself before all those who stood before him. He cried, make everyone go out from me, so that no one stayed with him when Joseph made himself known to his brothers. And he wept aloud so that the Egyptians heard it, and the house of Pharaoh heard it. Verse 3, and Joseph said to his brothers, I am Joseph. Is my father still alive? But his brothers could not answer him, for they were dismayed at his presence. So Joseph said to his brothers, come near to me, please. And that they came near. And he said, I am your brother Joseph, whom you sold into Egypt. And now do not be distressed or angry with yourselves because you sold me here. For Elohim, for God, sent me here before you to preserve life. So I'll stop there and kind of look at the pattern here. If you look at this, a few things here. He couldn't control himself. Okay, so that's one. So we're looking at what happens to a believer when you come to the understanding. You can't control yourself anymore. You've got to shout it from the rooftops. Oh my gosh, this is the truth, right? Then a lot of the sending everyone else away that has nothing to do with you. It's almost like you just need to be alone with your thoughts, or and you want to connect with others who are on this path. And it seems like this is kind of a pattern. And you guys can chime in here any moment here. Then it says here, he reveals himself, says, I am Joseph, is my father still alive? Then he says, come near to me. And he says again, I am Joseph, your brother. So I'll stop there and see if maybe there's some kind of pattern or relatability to believers now who may be experiencing this. When you do reveal yourself to brethren, and perhaps even to Judah himself in this modern age. And I know Zephaniah, maybe I'll start with you. You've had some experiences revealing yourself to Judah, and how it's almost like there's maybe a little bit of silence there at first, and then they kind of slowly go, yeah, maybe. I think you recently had an encounter with someone from Judah that we're talking about genealogies, I believe, from about Rachel and things. And so I don't know if you want to share some of your encounters. I know you've been to the land quite a few times, and you've had some really great interactions with our brother Judah.
Well, I did. I've had some interaction with the young Orthodox rabbi who made Aliyah from New York City area to Israel, and he even when you see some of his teaching online, you'll see Harry Rosenberg, if you're wondering who I'm talking about, that's his name, and he'll talk about the perspective of the tribes and where they went, and the separation of the kingdom. He talks about it very similar to like we talk about it. So I thought this is kind of unique, somebody like this, to talk to. And so he began to see that here are these people who actually believe Messiah has already come, but have all the markings of truly an Israelite. And so it didn't become anything about that we're trying to convert him to our way of thinking as far as the Messiah has come. But
right.
What he saw is that we're just family. He just recognized it. And what was kind of interesting is that during one of the meetings, somebody had asked him, and I kind of I wanted to hide at first because this was the first time meeting with a group of people like this, and the question was, well, what do you think of the deity of Messiah? I thought, what? Well, first of all, we haven't even got to the fact that he agrees in the Messiah we agree on, and now we're talking about his deity, and all this type of thing. And there was a little bit of awkwardness there at the time, but we got through that. And so I, when he was ready to leave, I accompanied him while he was leaving the hostel, and he says, "This is the most awesome meeting. I just had a great time." I mean, so he was just kind of like, that did not faze him. He says, nothing's going to change. It was kind of like the attitude, nothing's going to change, that I see that all you guys have all the hallmarks of being an Israelite, and nothing's going to change that. Even the awkward question that really doesn't apply to where I'm at right now. So that was just like that was just like an incredible time, and it's just like and I've had other occasions where I knew a guy. His name was Israel, by the way. Interesting. His name was Israel. He was Orthodox and ran a deli in down down in Miami. And so I worked around the corner and would go there for lunch. And he would actually say to me, he would just yell out, and just like in like jubilation when I would come into the store. He says, "Shevet Echim Gam Yachad, Stefania, Shevet Echim Gam Yachad." And I go, "Wow, okay, this is kind of interesting." And I noticed that
Which
other
means
people. This
those who
means,
don't know.
behold how good it is when brothers dwell together in unity. That's Hebrew for that. It means, so he said that to me. Jews would come in. Okay. Now I hadn't disclosed to him who I was at the time, right? At that time, I was looking like a Jew. At that time, I was wearing a kippah on my head and all that kind of thing. That was during a point in time where that's how I that was my journey at the time. And so one day, though, several years later, we went to a Holocaust memorial with my wife, and we were really moved by that Holocaust memorial. And then we said, let's go see Israel. We want to go see Israel. And so we went to see Israel and went to his deli, and it was like he interacted with us like it was we hadn't seen it was like the next day. It was not like there was any space of time between the last interaction with him and this one. It was like, and then what he asked us is interesting, intriguing question. Have you been to such and so messianic synagogue, on such and so street not far from his deli? Now, I thought that was kind of interesting. So by him asking that question, he was saying, I know who you are, and I've known it for a while. It doesn't make a difference to me because you're my brother. Israel is just as much your land as anybody else's. And that's what he said. He said that to me too. He says, Israel is just as much your land, and don't forget that, he said. That's the last telephone conversation I had with him. He said, Sophania, I just want you to know, you just remember this. Israel is as much your land as it is anyone else's, and never forget that.
Oh, that's powerful.
Yeah.
Those interactions are those are defining moments, in our walk, that we've got opportunities to interact with our brother like that, and that a lot of them prophetically see that. And like even with I actually got to meet Harry Rosenberg and talk with him a little bit, and he's got a pretty incredible story.
Yes.
One thing I will mention, I know Brian. Well, we have also another comment about having a Harry Rosenberg is also a brewer. I guess he's also known for his beer.
Yes.
A lot of connections come from the brewery, I guess, there too, right?
It was a Lost Tribes brewery, Lost Tribes beer, it was called, that he started. And that's what opened up his pursuit of the Lost Tribes, because what had happened is that he didn't even realize this. It was just a commercial adventure. And then all of a sudden, all kinds of people started contacting him and says, well, we believe we're from the Lost Tribes. These were people from all over the world. And he says, whoa, there's something here. I need to pursue this. And that began his real pursuit of and then he later on found out that he's a relative of the Vilna Gaon. Now, the Vilna Gaon is it's a term that means a learned one from Gaon, which is a place in Poland at the time. And so that meant he was like a sage, very respected term. And he said the Vilna Gaon believed in the tribes coming together. And here, Harry, when he discovered that he was related to him, he says, wow, it's in my DNA. No wonder why I'm so drawn to this whole mission, And that's what he's doing at the moment. And he's made Aliyah to Israel. And yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, and we also have some more comments here on YouTube that Amanda and I. So this is Glenn. Oh, Glenn and Amanda. Because I think the YouTube, I think their handle has been different. So this is Tesho Ben Yosef is saying he and Amanda, Glenn, have had many awesome encounters with Jewish people, the Yehudim in the land, that have either recognized us as not being Jewish or that they've asked if we were Jewish. We love those encounters. Yeah, it's interesting because I think I recently saw some photos on social media. I think, believe you guys at the Abraham Hostel in Jerusalem, and I believe Safanya, you spent some time there at the Abraham Hostel there in Jerusalem.
And that's where Harry Rosenberg came to see us, is at the Abraham Hostel. Yeah. Yeah.
This is after the third B'nai Yosef Congress 2.5 years ago. It looked like that, the interaction there, from what from what was shared to me, I also had some other mutual friends that were there that were describing the interaction was very much like it was just a family environment. No one was territorial in sense that it was like there was a more of a fluidity there, and I'm sure there's differences of opinion. Don't get me wrong. I'm sure there was that, but it's almost like you had an opportunity to just be there and welcomed, and that you weren't just a stranger. I guess. Yeah. Like those of us who feel like strangers. And in fact, it's funny, I'm just reminded of a song that I have. It's called Strangers, about Joseph's life. So maybe I'll post that on YouTube sometime, just the song and lyrics. And, just having that relatability. And as I said that, Glenn's also saying they've been very welcoming of us on their land. Yes. And they've been said things like, this is your land too. So there's a second witness. That's the kind of stuff that people need to hear. There's been division. Thank you, Glenn. I mean, that's really powerful that you share that, because there's been too much division up until 1800 years, even before that, even in the first century. There's been an us and them. There's been this dividing of brothers, right? And so us as Joseph people, this is the thing too. See, my initial encounters with Judah was that I wasn't trying to reveal myself to Judah as Joseph. That I was, because of my Sephardic ancestry, Sephardic Jewish heritage, I was trying to build a case that I was them. I was Judah. And it was incredibly hard to look at, to be looked on as a Jew without converting. It was like, so even some of the Orthodox rabbis that I would interact with in the early, 2000s, it was more of like, you may be Sephardim, you may be from the Anusim or the crypto Jews that converted, which that's what I suspect my ancestry from, as far as the documentation and where the names and everything went. My last name's Lopez, and I think same goes for you, Brian Sanchez. And so the issue, though, is that the records were not very good, when it comes to who was from, what family and how things, transpired as far as marriages and then bar mitzvahs and all of that. So the documentation's kind of spotty. And then you've got the issue that in Sephardic Spain for that time, there was a mixture of European, the Spanish Moors, so there's Arabs, and then of course there's the Spanish, the Portuguese, and then you've got the indigenous people in parts of Latin America. And so, the names may have followed, but there's just a commingling of the nations among the Sephardim that I started to kind of, I didn't want to embrace it first. I'm like, well, no, there's so many people with a mindset out there, the Sephardic Jews, those of us who've been lost in our ancestry, that no, we're Jews and that's it. And you kind of have this mindset, and you start going into doing more cultural Jewish things. And that's when I started learning Hebrew. My first thing about learning Hebrew was more spiritual. Then I started learning more modern Hebrew, thinking that was going to connect me, because I thought maybe I would live there at some point. But really, about 4 or 5 years into my walk, it's when I stopped and I go, wait a minute, this is where my relationship with Ephraim Ramona became a little bit more closer to them. And then I started reading Firstborn Factor, and then I started just having more friends who are more Hebrew Israelite. And then I had a close friend who actually found that he was Jewish and made Aliyah, and you know who it is. And from that relationship, it made it easier to embrace that I was of the scattered tribes of the nations versus trying to be, of Judah, because I saw how specific it was. Whenever Jehovah reveals that you're Judah, there's no doubt. There's no mistake, and there's no convoluted like, oh, you have to go and figure out your answer. This was crystal clear. He was Judah. He made Aliyah. He didn't have to convert, and it was like, all right, slam dunk. That's what changed it for me. I'm like, oh, why am I chasing this idea that I'm Judah when I'm really a mixture? I may be part of it, but I'm more of a mixture of the nations And because the Sephardim have been scattered all over different parts of Latin America, and obviously Sephardic Spain, that it became a lot more spiritually. I had some closure to go, no wonder I feel my heart, it feels a lot closer to the Ephraimite experience. So this here in Genesis 45, as we're reading this, I'm like, yeah, now when I reveal myself, and I've had encounters with our brother Judah, um, especially at the airport, that's where it gets interesting, because my name as it stands, it's very Sephardic, right? Very Jewish, and even my
Mhm.
middle name. And so I remember being in the airport, and I was in Paris the first time when I came into Israel, which I don't think I'll ever do again. It's very difficult, very challenging there in Paris right now because of the all the different security threats. So,
Yeah.
but the El Al, which is the Israeli Airlines, the employees kept asking me about my middle name, because my middle name is Oton, which is related to one of the descendants of Joshua, I believe, Otoniel. And so they kept saying, "How are you not?" Because when you're going through and they ask you if you're Jewish, that means to them you are, someone who is Jewish, and you can prove it. And so they keep asking me if I'm Jewish, and I'm like, "Well, no, I'm not. I'm just, I'm Hispanic, and I'm American." And they go, well, "Why do you have these Hebrew Jewish names?" And I went into this whole long explanation. So several hours. Of course, I was the one picked to go, and they went through all my stuff. And it's just they do that. So people don't get scared. It's a security thing. I didn't know it at first, but then I realized, yeah, this is probably for everyone's safety. And so I looked at it. So I'm like, I could really. By the time I got to that in 2011, I had already prepared my heart to just be like, no, I'm not going to come up here and say, yes, I'm a Jew, and here's why, and my ancestry was lost, and we converted from Catholicism. It's like they don't want to hear that. Either you're a Jew or you're not, and it got real black and white. So my heart was already prepared at that point in 2011. I'd had several years to process this, to go, if I had to say, yes, I'm your brother Joseph, I'm part of the scattered tribes, well, that wouldn't work either.
Mhm.
There's wisdom in some of these moments. We're dealing with security things, and so that's kind of like the brunt of my experience up front. And then it wasn't until after that then I would have these encounters like what you guys were talking about, with more of those who are open and going, yeah, they're welcoming us, who are coming for the feast, right? We're coming in the land of Israel. We're spending money, we're spending time, money, resources, and we're advocating to help the
Yeah.
Israeli economy. What else could we do to really love on our brother Judah?
Yeah.
And so, Brian, I'll ask you, as you're preparing. I know that y'all will work out your first Israel trip again. You know, um, I don't know if you've had some experiences with Jewish brethren. I know there's a rabbi that comes to Bridgeway. I haven't had a chance to talk, but maybe you've had some encounters, or perhaps there are some other ones you're anticipating. What is your take on revealing yourself to your brother Jude at this point,
Yeah,
as
I mean,
Joseph?
I haven't. Like I said, the only one that I see maybe once a year is the one that comes to Bridgeway, and he's sort of associated. He works with Kufi, um, but other than that, I mean, you know, uh, I just I'm just gonna love on him. That's all I can say right now, because I don't know, you know, I don't know where I would start really. I mean, talking to maybe we can discuss scripture and discuss the faith and how the how blessed we are, things like that. But it just sort of I haven't thought about it being here in South Texas. I saw something the other day where Bibi Netanyahu said that the pandemic should be over in a few weeks or a few months or whatever. So I'm thinking, well, maybe there's a chance I can still go in March, but I don't know. But I don't. To answer your question, I don't really. I've thought about it, but I would just be too nervous. I would just love on him. That's all I can say at this point. It's too early in the game for me right now, because I'll be afraid to say something I shouldn't have said, or this or that. I would just love him.
That's
Right.
wisdom.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's wisdom. Yeah. So it's good to get everyone's perspective, because as those of you know, that Brian, you're a good maybe year and a half into your walk, which is important. The reason why you're on this broadcast is something spiritually and prophetically, I think, is significant for people to see that there's someone in your
And
walk and
yeah,
in
it's
your
good. It's
journey.
good to have a rookie on here on the show.
Well,
Someone who's fresh.
I
Someone who's fresh.
I see it more of a just your willingness to do this is quite, I get, significant, in that
Mhm.
we're not pretending to be anything. We're not pretending to be any authority figure. I know Zephaniah and I, we've got our Beyond the Mountain outlet that we do, but that's
Mm-hmm.
more. It's kind of like this under Zephaniah, if I could put it tactfully. We see that Joseph has been revealed to Judah in some ways, but we're maybe kind of in the spot where we said, "Hey, I'm Joseph," and then Judah's kind of looking at you, going, "Really? Like what?"
Mm-hmm.
And then you say, and then you're asking Judah to come closer. No, come closer. No, really, I'm Joseph.
Mm-hmm.
So in that, I think perhaps the first one, and I kind of prophetically assign the first time when he says, "I am Joseph," is maybe Yeshua's first arrival. And then when he says, "Come closer," like we're in that spot between Yeshua's death and resurrection to now, that we're asking Judah, "No, come closer. I want to show you who I really am."
Mm-hmm.
And it's during that time period that maybe perhaps we're in our brokenness. So Beyond the Mountain was born a lot of the for the broken heart of Ephraim, or of Joseph, the Joseph people, that we've been without family for so long. We've been without our brother for so long. And just like I sing about the prodigal son story, I sang it at Sukkot at Bridgeway Church, that the prodigal son returning home. Yeah, there's a bit of a delay there, where the brother, there's a feasting and everything, and then the brother doesn't want to come out to the feast. He kind of, talks to the father about why didn't you do this for me? So there's a little bit of a significance there, that in that state right now, this is where we should be working on our heart, because many of us are not. Maybe our default isn't to love. It's not. It's to criticize. It's to analyze and to dissect what our belief systems are. We've been doing it for so long. And we come from a background, unfortunately, of a faith base that is all about evaluating whether or not you're going to heaven or hell. So because we've been processing this and we positioning our statement of faith and our belief system on, are you saved or not? We approach our brother Judah like that, guess what? It doesn't go over so good, does it?
Mm-hmm.
But if we're able to love, as you said, and not hold a record of wrongs and truly operate in love, and that there's no fear in love, and that perfect love casts out fear, and with those things we go, and also that we weren't created with a spirit of fear, we shouldn't be afraid, that we were created with power, love, and a sound mind, that perhaps our efforts in Beyond the Mountain, and we do have a pretty incredible interview that we're going to publish here in a couple of days, Afanya, with Nathan Harmon, that I think is indicative of like identity and different themes that you touched on, that we'll be hopefully that'll be out in a couple of days, that you see, you go, this is what we need. It's in this time of exile, away from the land. Yes, the land, we may have Judah saying that prophetically and emotionally and things, right? But essentially, we are not just going to go waltz into the land and say, "Oh, we're just going to live there." You've heard believers talk about like, "Oh, they're prophetically feel like, oh, they're called to live in Israel," and I go, "All right, so how? How are you going to live in Israel? That's Judah's. We're under Judah. Judah has the scepter right now, and what are we doing to help further their economy there in those who are living there in the land? Unless we think that we're going to go take up space and take up settlement land and take up territory that should belong to our brother Judah first, that's where it gets tricky. You go, well, how about you go visit, and maybe you want to buy some kind of a property or timeshare through our brother Judah, and maybe have some kind of dealings. Yeah, perhaps I've had different people ask me about that, and I go, yeah, by all means. Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you do some kind of financial transaction there in Israel through an Israeli, someone who's a citizen, to help further along? Maybe you buy a little piece of a settlement or a farming community or something if it's available. I know these things are scarce, but if the opportunity arises for you to go and do something for the land, then do it. Like be led by Him to do it, right? Not because you want to make money off of it. There's that. It's a fun. I'm sure you heard before that no one gets rich in Israel. You have to come with a fortune yourself. It's an incredibly difficult place to go and just make $1 million. You're not going to do it, and that's the way the land is designed. And hallelujah that it's designed like that. You're not going to get rich quick over there. And so we have some other comments coming through. Lena, as our first-time guest here, she's saying that she was stopped in customs in Israel and interviewed for an hour, and when she said that they were going to go celebrate Sukkot, they found it odd that I guess a Gentile was there for that purpose. Yeah, and that's probably a lot of the reaction when we do tell our brother Judah at customs or in these different government offices, like, hey, we're coming for the feast. Maybe it's not so uncommon now because I've seen thousands of us come through, but I don't know, Zephaniah, have you had some interesting times? Have you ever mentioned that you were coming for the feast when you go into Israel?
Well, we've been there several times now, so uh, there was never any real lengthy interrogation that we've ever had. Uh, it was just a real simple. One thing you need to be aware of: don't go, saying, "Yeah, I'm going to go to visit this person, that person." That you don't start. Don't have your whole laundry list of exactly what you're going to do. Just be very brief. Just be very simple. I said, we're coming here. We love the land of Israel, and we're looking forward that we're getting a chance to visit again. And that's it. We just
Yeah.
do it that simple, and then let us in, and we're good to go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Brian, so when you go, you'll be going obviously with a different group, and there's, you'll be pretty much going with if you do end up going, Yah willing, you'll kind of have a little bit of a red carpet roll in there for yourself, with an organization that's already approved and going through all of the steps, right? I mean, Kufai's got, I just heard Kufai's got like 10 million members now. That's a pretty significant number of members.
Yeah.
So if you end up going to the Kufai group, you've got that covering, right? That's there, and they have a really good, strong alliance with our brother Judah, and I just think it's incredibly significant that you happen to be linked up with that. So have you had any other thoughts on that, on when you go into there?
I'm wondering if it's ever going to happen. We'll see. Lyndon Allen, Central Regional Coordinator, will be coming down to Corpus in February, and at the end of February, for a service here at one of the local churches. And then I'm also going to meet him up in Katy, Texas, for another event up there in the first or second week of February. So we'll talk. We'll discuss it, and I can't wait. It's going to be, like I said, I'm going with an organization that's typically, it's for the most part evangelical. A lot of pastors are going to go, and I can't wait for the conversations I'm going to have. It'll be interesting. Maybe I could share some of my, I don't know. We'll see how it happens. We'll see how it goes. I can't wait, and hopefully I can meet the Ephraim and Ramona Frank. That'd be cool to maybe get away for a little bit, sneak away and get to meet them.
Or yeah, who knows? They may have even join you at one of the tour sites and just
Yeah, I'll tell them, hey, we're going to be here at this time. We're going to go, because I know they, like I said, like you said, they really do roll out the red carpet for Kufai, and we'll meet the IDF and maybe a couple of officials there in Israel, and a tour. It's going to be great. I can't wait. Like I said, I hope it happens. If not, well, I'll get there in the kingdom. We'll see.
Yeah, and so I'll kind of give the encouragement to those who will be interested, or for those who are watching, if you just joined us, or if you perhaps have been to the land, and we've had several on here share their experiences. It's important to get these experiences and these things to be well rounded, because you never know when that opportunity will arise for him to call you up like that, right? Yeah, I never knew. Again, before I went, I actually I had 2 paid trips to Israel, 2004, 2006. And both times they were both canceled at the last minute. And I didn't actually get to go my first time until 2011. And maybe there's a significance for me, and maybe it's because I needed to work out a lot of my perspectives of trying to identify as a Sephardic Jew first, and then once again that was torn down. So there may be a bit of an identity thing for those who are still contemplating going to the land. That prophetically, it's when he speaks to you, and that it's during this time period that we could be preparing our hearts for it. And a lot of what we recognize as our identity as believers in Yeshua, we end up, I think we end up running the risk of having the religious spirit on us to the point where we think it's our responsibility to tell Judah about who Jesus is and preach Jesus to them. And I think this is probably one area that's maybe a bit of a landmine issue for some believers, because they really strongly feel we should be speaking to our brother Judah about salvation and about the idea of Jesus as we grow up. Even if you talk to him and you use the name Yeshua, it's still that to them. And to truly understand what Judah has been through, our brother our Jewish brethren, not our Messianic Jewish brethren. I'm talking about our Jewish, Orthodox Jewish brethren, or those who are not believers in Yeshua, to really understand what they've been through. Like I said, just find you've gone to Holocaust remembrance, memorials. You've been to the land. I've been to the land. Brian, you are at your fingertips. You've shared some incredible information with me through Kufi. They have on the website, they've got a what's it called, it's the like their introductory PDF that shares the history of the state of Israel.
You got some really cool
So
booklets you can download also.
I thought it was one of the best I've ever seen. It really was. It was historical. It was prophetic. It was political, and in the right ways, showing the right side of the.
And I like to look at the name Kufi, Christians United for Israel. I like to look at it as Ephraim united for brother Judah. That's what I like. I like to look at it as.
Right, and that would be more of a prophetic thing, So in a lot of the times when we have opportunities like this, you say, before we start going and preaching what we believe from a religious spirit, I encourage those who are watching, or perhaps you can encourage others who may be watching this video, or as you're going about your day, encourage them to study about, or to just learn the history, from the British Mandate, the Balfour Declaration. You look at the way the state was formed. You look at some of the challenges after the Holocaust. You look at how the settlements came about. It truly is a miracle. And so for all the, we've heard all the replacement theology theories as if the Jewish people don't matter anymore. And you say, well, about a little over 70 years ago, I think the Almighty squashed that idea. We are now without excuse to say, oh, the Jewish people don't matter anymore, or they're not God's people. I'm like, well, I'm pretty sure He allowed that, and that was a fulfillment of many scriptures in the prophets, right? And so when you're looking at that and you go, all right, now what do you do with it? Because you can't just put a Bible under your arm and go over to the land and go, point your finger at them about their salvation. It's a much more complex thing. Just as complex here as we see Joseph revealing himself, and then there being a pause and maybe a non-response, and then Joseph says, okay, well, come closer. I'm Joseph. Okay. And then there's the dialogue. And then before we can get to the weeping on each other's necks, there's going to be the two sticks being brought close together, close enough. And this is where the Almighty will intervene. And so I was going to share here quickly on when Jehovah speaks to Jacob. So while this is going on, we've got Jacob in the background, and who is now looking at, so verse 46, he says, so this is when Jehovah, from God spoke to Israel, verse 2, in visions of the night, and said, Jacob, Jacob. He said, here I am. Then he said, I am Elohim, Elohim of your father, God of your father. Do not be afraid to go down to Egypt, for there I will make you into a great nation. That is that word there is goy. I myself will go down with you to Egypt, and I will also bring you up again, and Joseph's hands shall close your eyes. So this was the clearance, because prior to this, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the instruction was to not go to any other place, but to stay in Canaan. And so as we're reading this as a prophetic word, when you have the clearance from the Almighty, now the prophecy here is now that this is what's going to happen. So any thoughts, Safani, I'll start with you. Any thoughts about, getting a word, this word that Jacob got, if there's anything that stands out to you about this word that he got?
For one, I think it's interesting that he's being referred to as Jacob. So we've talked about that before, when you see the difference between when he's referred to as Israel versus referred to as Jacob. Like, it's like the natural man now is looking at things through natural eyes, Jacob, right? And now he has to be, confronted by the Most High to say, oh, you're not to be afraid. Go down and go down to Egypt, and I'll make you a great nation. So there you have that issue right there. Again, sometimes we enter into these situations in our lives where it's the natural man that's responding more than the one that's following the life of the Spirit. And what will happen is that sometimes the Father will call us by our natural name, and then eventually shake us into, uh, you know, coming into the perspective of the Spirit again. And then we can see, okay, I don't need to be afraid. I don't need to entertain that spirit. I need to go and do what I'm supposed to do.
Hmm. And Brian, anything jump out at you? That's awesome. I want to comment on that here in a minute. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I was thinking about what you said a little while ago about the Balfour Declaration, and you got this segment of the faith that talks about these dispensations. That the dispensation of grace that we're supposedly in right now is only, it's God's dealing with the church only right now. That's it. Judah, or in their eyes, Israel, which in their eyes is all of Judah, just the Jews only. They've kind of been put on hold, and He'll deal with them in the Great Tribulation, supposedly, while we escape, apparently. You got 1948 occurred, and then 1967 occurred. So what, well, you can't say that then, that this is just for the church right now, because He's not dealing with Israel anymore. Well, those two gigantic events occurred. So that kind of shatters that notion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that jumped out at me when you mentioned that earlier about the Balfour Declaration.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, interesting that there's a 20-year span, and the age of 20 is when someone in the Torah is considered a male, an adult male, and or an adult rather, 20 years. And so here you are, Israel's first 20 years, and then there's a major significant event with the with East Jerusalem, right? So you can't deny the evidence. And you're looking at dispensations. Dispensations are, they're none other than these boundary stones that we keep moving. Seems like we as mankind have moved the goalposts every time we get close to a revelation understanding of it. It's like, oh, okay, here's a Reformation, and then here's dispensations, and here's another. Now the newest doctrinal stance, aside from Judah being replaced, guess what? Oh, they're imposters now. So it's not just dispensations anymore, is it? Now it's discrimination. Now it's anti-Semitism repackaged as saying, we're okay with a little bit of racism. We're okay with a little bit of prejudice as long as we package it in something doctrinal. Oh, look, they're Edomites, so they're Khazars, whatever it is we want to throw at our brother Judah. It's nonsense. But it came on the heels of dispensations, did it not? And we had I don't believe we're to have any any dealings with this other than standing against it. And I had personal dealings with it, a little, year and a half ago, of a group of people that, I thought I was going to go into speaking engagement, and I started kind of getting to know the other speakers, and come to find out it's like they believed that Judah, they're Edomites, and they were like sincere about it, and they were calm, they weren't shouting, they're just like, yeah, they're imposters, and they're very casually accusing the, anyone who is a modern day Israeli or Jew is not being Jewish at all, and that they're imposters. And you're going, okay, this is about the most, and that the state of Israel shouldn't exist. I of course, I got a little bit passionate. I go, so should the state of Israel currently exist? And they go, no, we don't believe it's of God. I'm like, okay. So there are people who actually believe that, and they're preaching that, and who think that they're biblically being responsible preaching that. Okay. If you don't want to stand with the political state of Israel, if you don't want to stand for the politics of it, that's one thing. But if you're able to say, hey, what happens if you get a revelation about, hey, this is part of prophecy being fulfilled, whether it looks perfect or polished or not, this is something of being fulfilled. We see also Lena commenting on those who are trying to change Judah, and also about some of the groups like BHI that have attempted to change the history. Yeah, there's plenty of groups out there. BHI is just one of them. There are plenty of other groups that wouldn't even consider themselves hate groups, but yet spew out this type of anti-Semitism. And not to, I don't want to go too much into this, but I think, Brian, you've been firsthand witness to some of the things that CUFI is doing to fight anti-Semitism in the modern day. I think primarily with the with the BDS movement. That's the boycott, sanction, and divest movement against the state of Israel. I don't know if you had any comments on that, on some of their things, because I know there's probably more that's come out here lately.
No, yeah, they're very active. I mean, and again, I don't, all the, I have some differences, of course, with the theology, but I'm totally 100% on board on what the organization does in supporting the land and the military and fighting against anti-Semitism. But Pastor John Hagee, he is a lion when it comes to anti-Semitism. I mean, his best friend is Rabbi Scheinberg out of San Antonio. They're like best friends, and I think that's just awesome. And he speaks out, man. He goes nuts when there's reports of anti-Semitism that occurs anywhere, especially here in America. But yeah, they're very active in that.
Mm-hmm. That's great, and it's great that you're exposed to it, because, and again, there's there's too much of this dispensation, and I don't mean to really be this harsh, but this is, I really would liken the dispensation to being rhetoric at this point, because if you want to stand on a doctrinal stance, then you start building on the dispensation understanding. And I've had discussions, and again, I've had to distance myself from some of the heated debates that have come from that, because I would start arguing, well, when did this memo of dispensation go out? And how exactly did the God of Israel communicate this to the church? Was it in some kind of a paper memo? Was there messengers out there that somehow some people missed the memo? Did it mean that, like, Baptists got it but Catholics didn't? Like, who decided that this was a dispensation, these time periods, right? I remember this different Bibles that I had broken down. There's this one Bible that was very famous among leaders. I think it's a Dake Bible. I remember buying that thing. It was like $200. And it went into depth, and every time there was a scripture, there was a little comment, and every time there was something there, especially in the Old Testament, as they say, there was always something about, well, this is part of the dispensation of whatever it was that they labeled it, and it was like this indoctrination. By the time you got through some, just maybe a few chapters, you're like already like, it's like a way of I felt I was like I was being gaslighted. I'm like, oh, so I'm reading scripture, and I'm like, oh, that's not what it means. This is what it means. And like the whole time, you can't even interpret something for yourself. And so for me, and I still have to be careful here because I get a little passionate about this. I'm like, I don't like being gaslighted. I don't like someone telling me when I see something clearly in Scripture to go, no, that's not what it means. This is what it means. Like, no, that's also a definition of gaslighting. You're repositioning something, and no wonder people develop this religious spirit and just start to kind of believe the lie. And you go, well, how do you unravel that? Especially when it's tied to identity. And not only do you say, okay, not only do am I of this school of thought or of this, but then I feel the sense of entitlement that now all the holidays and all the customs and keeping Sunday as a Sabbath, all of that comes into play. It's no longer this kind of casual thing. Like, no, it's all intentional at this point. And there are people in leadership that say this is what they're carrying out. And I've heard many of them quote the church fathers and be more loyal to the church fathers than the fathers Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And there's a reason for that. Same thing happened in Judaism, the 4th century, right? And we can go on and on about the division. And so as you see those two sticks behind you or the two tree branches behind you, Brian, there's a reason they split off. And that split, yes, it happened obviously when the kingdom split, but then there was another huge spiritual split in the 4th century. Right, when the Christian church said we're going to be the church, and then Rabbi Akiva and the modern Pharisaic Judaism, rabbinic Judaism, said we're going to be Jewish. I don't know if you guys kind of see that there's been multiple kingdom splits, but this last one has been possibly the most difficult to overcome. Also here, Glenn's also saying get together seems to be. Jehovah inspired. If you listen to lyrics, especially during the last Torah portion and Ezekiel 37, today's Torah portion. So he's sharing a video there. I believe it's a song. Yeah, that's a song that he did. That's awesome. I loved it. And that, yeah, Ezekiel 37 We can, and maybe we'll read parts of that here as we wind down. But that Zephaniah, I want to get your thoughts there on some of this undoing. When you start unraveling some of the dispensational stuff, right,
Mm.
and you start
Mm.
looking at this, kind of like what spiritually would you encourage people when they find themselves in that spot where you're going, well, I think I've inherited lies. Now what do you do?
Well, yeah, it definitely is that. Don't go to the extreme of, okay, I've inherited lies. So that means when I've embraced my Savior, now that's a lie too, and I've got to deal with that. No, we're not talking about that. We're talking about the lies of of all these other, like we're talking about these dispensations. Like, for instance, we're under the age of law or under the age of grace or whatever. Or they would just randomly, well, call these particular ages certain ages, and is there really any, if you really started studying it out, it really doesn't make a whole lot of sense. uh you know the Father just does he doesn't deal with us in segmented periods of time. you know the Hebraic thought is not linear, and that's what dispensation is: linear thinking. Hebraic thinking is circular. you know uh you have the old saying that says, what goes around comes around. Hey, that's Hebraic thought. What goes around comes around, because, hey, when Sukkot goes around, it comes around, and you have to, and you're there again, right?
Yeah, they're in cycles, right? It's more cyclical, and that a prophetic word could mean something
Yeah,
in one time period, but then you go into another time period, you're
yeah,
going, wow, this it still has meaning. So when it
yes,
says, I will make you a great nation, or it says, I will bless you who those who bless you, curse you, those who curse you, that still holds water, right? That still holds
yes,
significance. That wasn't just
yeah,
for Abraham.
yeah,
And you take it a step further, right? We've been told doctrinally that the Acts chapter 2, the miracle that happened there of the cloven tongues, and then all the healing and the
yes,
miracles that happened. Oh, well, that was just for the disciples. That was then. This is
yeah,
now. And you have
yeah,
modern Christian movements that want a position like that, and you go, okay, I see what you're doing here. What you're doing is creating I guess a dependency on a system, on a group of people, on a set of belief systems, because it's all around identity. Because if
yes,
you somehow are filled with His Spirit and you start operating in all the gifts on your own, you become a threat to the whole system. And that's
yeah,
where I think the adversary has done a fantastic job of suppressing, especially
yeah,
now. So you look at the progression. There's the splitting off of the fourth century. Then you've got the modern, or I guess not the modern, but you had the establishment of the church. Albeit the Catholic Church, the Vatican, and all that. And then you had reformations from there. So there became kind of reform Catholic movements. And it wasn't until here in the Western civilization, the last couple of hundred years, that you had more of a, albeit like more non-denomination or more of a spiritual
yeah,
understanding of things, right? And it
yes,
really hasn't been, but maybe in the last, I want to say, maybe in the last 70 years, that there's been a Torah awakening of
right,
of people who are non-Jewish that are
yes,
coming to a place where to say, hey, there may be something here to study in Torah.
yeah.
And that timeline, it's very fresh, is
Mm.
it not?
Yes, and when you actually, it's interesting that you say Great Awakening, because that's what Nathan, who I recently interviewed, he said that we're in the midst of a Great Awakening. I think what's kind of interesting is that he said um, that, and we actually, he said that the Father has called him. He says in Jeremiah 16, it talks about uh, the fishers and the hunters.
Mm-hmm.
The Father said to him that he's a hunter. Now, I think
Mm-hmm.
that what's kind of interesting is that if he's saying that he's a hunter, this is what I was pondering, is that means we're now at the stage of, if we're at the stage of hunting, this push in this last great awakening, this is the final opportunity to either you're going to kick against the goads and deny your identity and who you are, or when that opportunity comes your way to show you who you are, you need to embrace it, because we're now in that last push and the hunters are now here. So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, it is.
And
Wow.
so I would, but I just want to go back to where we were in Genesis 45, and you had mentioned about what does this remind. Prior to coming onto the program, we were discussing this actually, but it came to me while we were just reading it again, and that reminds me of actually Thomas. Thomas, when he was confronted with the resurrected Messiah in front of
Oh
him,
yeah.
it was like all of a sudden it was like, no, you got to come a little closer, just like he did with his brothers. Come a little closer now.
Mhm.
And finally he ends up coming so close that he ends up touching, his side and his hands, and all of a sudden now he sees that who the risen Savior is, and that's Yeshua himself now, and he's not denying it anymore. It's almost like the
Yes.
brothers were responding like Thomas. I'm not going to believe this until I'm getting really really close to you, until I can see. And all of a sudden, oh, okay, wow, okay, this is amazing. You're still alive, and you're you've been in this position. Wow.
Mm-hmm. Wow. That is great. I had not thought about that, and that's great. I love this. That's a what a nice parallel, and it's a good segue because we while you were talking, we had a comment come through from Lena asking if you could elaborate on the teaching of Jehovah's dealing with men not being linear but cyclical. So
Yes.
so this actually ties into that, and here's why I
Yes.
think, and you can obviously play off this, so someone who's a more linear in thought, who is probably trusting more their logic and reason,
Yep.
and some of what we see, there are people, groups, societies that have perfected that, which is where we get philosophia, the philosophy, the lovers of wisdom, of human wisdom, almost as if it's a deity in itself. That there are those who have that love of human wisdom that so much have this romantic, almost this romance with it, right? With their thoughts and with their perspective. That the
Yes.
linear thought, because it's almost like a second nature. They don't even think about it. It's like, oh yeah, well, logically, you have to prove something. So in the event of Thomas, he says, well, okay, well, if you're the Messiah, then you died, so where are your scars? And there's that logic,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where it takes you. Cyclical or Hebraic thought is based on something very specific. You guys want to know what it is? What I believe it is? It's emunah. It's faithfulness. It's having faith and
Yeah.
operating with action. And that, all the things that Jehovah has called us to, whether it be the feast, Shabbat, whether it be different things he wants us to eat, have all required us to walk in faithfulness to it. It's not, oh, I get to believe in it, but to do something different. That's the danger with linear thought. We also see that the first century had a cult of the Gnostics who were masters at this as well, right? The Gnostics, who were the ones who had belief systems, but yet they would do something completely opposite. So I don't know if I'll stop there.
Let's look at two things. So if we have two endpoints like this, that it starts here and it ends here, that's linear thinking, right? Versus let's make a circle. It starts here and it ends here, and we're beginning all over again. Okay, if we look at even scripture testifies to the fact that this is not linear at all. It's a circular. If you go to Isaiah 46:10, maybe you could even bring that up on the screen there.
Okay, give me one moment. Isaiah 46:10.
Yeah. Might back up to verse 9 even too.
All right. That's the cool thing about this, we can just pull up the program there. And there's
Okay,
verse
so
8 maybe.
let's just start with 8 there. Remember this and stand firm. Recall it to mind, you transgressors. Remember the former things of old, for I am God and there is no other. I am God and there's none like me, declaring the end from the beginning and from ancient times, things not yet done, saying, my counsel shall stand and I will accomplish all my purposes. Okay, so if we look at this whole thing that we've been actually studying the beginning, but a sheet means the beginning. Okay, in the beginning. And as we've been studying but a sheet, we've been discovering that really what is happening is that the end is being declared from looking at the beginning. There it is. It's showing that this is not linear at all. It's not this end point from one to another. It's cyclical. It's going around. I would try to get it in my brain. Sometimes I go into the grocery store and you'd hear these secular songs, you know. And sometimes what you'd have to do is I'm going to change the lyrics to the song, so I'm not having all this other garbage going through my mind. So there was one song that was called "On and On." You probably remember it. So I changed the song to a cyclical Hebrew mindset, and I said, on and on from Shabbat to the feast days, on and on. So yeah,
That's awesome. Yeah, I think
I'm guilty
I
of
think
that big time.
yeah.
I'm
I
guilty of
think
changing. I'm guilty of changing lyrics for secular songs because I can't get out of the '80s.
yeah, and I think there's something to that, you know, of wanting there maybe being a purpose in singing about it as well, and or speaking. You know, this is something prophetic that we have a responsibility when we're seeing the end declared from the beginning. That the seed of the woman would crush the head of the serpent.
yes,
That's the end from the beginning.
yeah,
We see Revelation stuff like that, you know. But there's a
yeah.
lamb that slammed the foundations of the earth. Okay, well that's another witness. I mean, there's multiple witnesses, right? So what I love about the way Isaiah positions this is that it just encompasses so much of the richness of who Yeshua is and who he came to be as a suffering servant, like Joseph.
Yeah.
This whole idea of, you know, and I'm not sure if this is from Judaism or this is more of a first century teaching of Messiah ben Yosef, of being the suffering servant first, you know, before he is, you know, Mashiach ben David, Messiah ben David, the righteous ruler, king. You know, these are two ideas that you're like, well, how can you miss this? He wasn't supposed to be righteous king over all the earth just yet.
I hope
He's going
Lena, does she is she getting this? I hope that our explanation.
Oh yeah, yeah. I guess so. It looks like perhaps she said she did echo the declaring the end from the beginning. So I think
Okay.
unless there's something else, here, we're happy to answer. But yeah, we're gonna wind down here. We're you know, we have so many different angles of this. What I do want to end with, Stefania, if you don't mind, I'd like for there to be Sissy. Yes, I've heard Christian teaches evolution, and then says Messiah came to do away with the Torah. Everything is in the state of flux. Well, yeah, and I think that we're starting to see, like, I guess how what's the best way to gracefully put this, Stefania? And you're much better, you know, with some of this articulating this. But I would say, like, when you're looking at the contrast between those who are preaching this doctrine of Torah being done away with, and then they're starting to welcome certain secular ideas. Wouldn't you say that's just kind of another state of being lost, of not knowing who they are? Because if they knew who they are and they believed his word to be true, wouldn't be uttering this nonsense, would they?
Yeah, it's just again when you, and that's the key to and you know, I would encourage those to listen to the interview with Nathan again. I want to just put that out because he is actually going to those who are of that state of being and beginning to lead them down the journey of showing who they are. And I described what I mentioned to him in the interview. I said, it sounds like what you do is lead them down the road to Emmaus. If you remember, the road to Emmaus was that Yeshua was explaining them all these things from the Torah and the prophets. So what was he doing? He was going back to the beginning to declare, to explain to these two men the end. Okay, there it is again. And so what we have to do is we have to bring them onto the road of Emmaus. We all have to walk that road. We have to walk the road. And it's a narrow road too. It's not a road that's fraught with wide ideas of Western thinking. It's a narrow way. And on that road, what we do is we begin to see, and things open up to us like we've never seen before in the scripture. And I believe that what Brian is describing is that the Father is actually opening it up to scripture in such a way, because he's being freed of this linear mindset, and we will encounter people that think linearly. They may be stuck there, but their Father will give you keys. If you have relationships with people, sometime he's going to give you a key to their heart. And so always pay attention to what they say. Don't ever write them off and say, I'm not going to pay attention to what they're saying. I'm going to listen very carefully to what they're saying, because within what they say, the Father, through the Holy Spirit, may open up to you a key to their heart. And when that door is open, no man can shut it.
Amen. Yeah, that's powerful. And I think a lot of us, we end up associating certain things and ideas to belief systems, and we can miss an opportunity to reach people's hearts. That's where the danger here is. Linear thinking, logical thinking, reminds me in Romans 8 where it says the mindset of the flesh, it's warring. It cannot obey. It gives certain, even First Peter 2 talks about the nature of the flesh. That it's, as you draw the conclusion, you're going, linear thinking is designed to speak against Torah. That's how you know who's talking.
Yes.
You want to just operate in discernment of spirits. That's how you know who's talking. When someone's saying that the Word of God is some part of the Word of God is done away with, and we've got some new doctrine we have to believe in, or some New Testament writings, or that somehow Paul's letters replace all of that. That's some dangerous ground. Because you're like, so you could see, like, for instance, when envy and jealousy is speaking through somebody, competition, drivenness, fear, anxiety, stress. Yes. We know it's the other kingdom speaking through this person. We become a mouthpiece for the other kingdom, right? And we know when the Spirit is speaking, because it's centered around love and compassion. We see that the interaction, when Joseph obviously was doing what he did to his brothers, having them go to jail, and really kind of putting him through a little bit of trouble. Perhaps he was operating somewhat in the flesh. It was an emotional response, right? But then you see the Spirit come in, and he couldn't contain himself, and he revealed himself, right? So we can see there's a difference there. So we've been talking, throughout since late October about the flesh versus spirit. We've been talking, from the very beginning. We've been talking about these Torah portions that we see the Torah starts to lay the groundwork for flesh versus spirit very clearly. And so we as we wind down here, I want to get final thoughts. We'll start with Brian and then Yusufanya, and then I'd like to end with reading part of Ezekiel 37, not the whole thing, but just part of it, and then we can end with prayer. So how does that sound to you guys? Is that all right?
Sounds good.
So Brian, go ahead. Any final thoughts? Anything jumps out at you about this portion or moving forward?
No, again, just pretty much what I mentioned to start the segment. It's a powerful parashah with Joseph, not being able to contain himself and to reveal himself to his brothers. And I love the humility that he has by not being, some of us could have easily been very, could have just came down on our brothers. Like, you see, this is me, and y'all made a big mistake, and pounding your chest, and I'm alive, and I'm here, and I'm rich, and I'm, I have this title in Egypt, and he didn't do any of that. I mean, he was just so grateful to see his brothers. He was full of humility, and same thing for his brothers. His brothers could have reacted differently, and they were almost. It says here they were almost startled. So the level of humility on both ends is a beautiful thing, and that just kind of reminds me of what it's going to be like when the time comes when the two sticks get together. That's what I take from this Torah portion, and then of course next week is probably my favorite parashah, of the crossing of the hands when he blesses Ephraim and Manasseh. It's man, like I said, this whole thing is just insane. Manasseh, the name of Manasseh, meaning I believe it's forgetfulness.
It caused me to forget, yeah. Right.
Ephraim, multiplicity. If you don't get that, if that doesn't click, I pray that it clicks soon.
Of course, yes, and when we find ourselves in Egypt, in a place of bondage, right? That he gives us these prophetic reminders that cause us to forget our pain and to have our days multiplied or abundant. Ephraim being the fruitful one, right? And interestingly, you're mentioning two sticks, and then you're referencing the two hands crossed, and so you see the correlation here of the two sticks, which I'll be reading here soon. And then
and I mean more the fact that the Manasseh, meaning forgetfulness of the house of Israel, forgetting the God of Israel, and forgetting his instruction, the instruction manual, forgetting his name, having not even no clue what his name is. It's that really blows my mind.
Oh yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
Or was me.
That's a good way of putting it. Yeah, we've been fruitful in some things. We've also forgotten who we are. And, we look at the, when you hear songs, and I've always tickled by them. And growing up, it's like, oh, we call upon your name, Lord. We call upon your name. And after a while, I asked them, like, okay, so what is it? And then they'll just say, oh, it's Jesus. You're like, okay, but that's the name of his son. But we're talking about God the Father, who we're singing to. And they'd say, well, it's the Lord. I'm like, okay, but what's his name? And I would get into these like over and over, and finally, going searching it myself. I'm like, oh, there's one name. It's not a bunch of names, just one name, and all the rest are titles. And yeah, so it takes a little bit to come. And Zafan, you're talking about a great awakening that's being referred to by Nathan and others. And one of the first things when you have a great awakening, well, it's like someone who's waking up out of a deep sleep or a coma. When you first wake up, your eyesight's not quite there. You've got to kind of come to your senses, if you will.
I think I see two trees walking, in other words.
Yeah, exactly. You kind of get blurred vision. You're going, all right, and then your memory's a little spotty. If you ever talked to anyone who's just been kind of through maybe a traumatic experience, or maybe waking up out of something like that, you're not 100%. So Brian, thank you for commenting on that. It's great. And I was going to say, so you see the vision of two sticks, right? And then you've got the Valley of Dry Bones, which deals with bones. There happens to be two bones involved with the crossing of the hands, right? And then you've got possibly two, and again, we weren't there historically to verify this, but there possibly being two sticks when Yeshua was executed on what we modern day call a cross, but there was just two sticks that possibly were involved with the execution of Yeshua and the resurrection, right? So there's that, the recurring theme. So, Fanya, any final thoughts?
Well, I was this morning. I was looking out my living room window and just pondering the end of this Torah portion, and it's talking about this whole issue of Yosef, who began to deal with the people, and they said that they were starving, and what can they do? And next thing you know, what they're doing is, first of all, selling their livestock, and then they ran out of their silver, and we have nothing to pay for more. So now they gave away their land. Okay. And so you're left to look at, is this indicative of the Egyptians being in slavery? But then it hit me as I was pondering all this, that the ones who were not in slavery initially were the Israelites who were given the land of Goshen. They owned property. They owned Goshen. It was given to them. And yet you see this turning of the tables that later on happens when somebody does not forgets Yosef and who he was. And next thing you know, It's the Israelites that are the slaves. It's kind of interesting, the ironies of these that we see in life that take place. And I don't know if that uh, what we're going through today, what we're seeing, people's businesses failing because certain things are put upon them that they can't even function in their business anymore. And it's getting to the point where, uh, well, we'll buy it. We'll buy your business or something like that, or just buy your land and buy your property and all this kind of thing. And is there something hidden in this whole idea that the land of Goshen is a land that the Israelites, and keep in mind, Goshen was outside of the land of Israel, and yet they that land uh, was theirs, and they didn't have to participate in this, and they didn't move into cities like the rest of them. That's what it talks about, moving into cities as well. So just something to ponder.
Yeah, yeah, oh yeah. That is a good preview to what I believe, what I plan, and y'all willing, we'll share next week about the Western world, primarily the United States, being very much like Egypt, even with two major rivers going through them. And maybe I'll put up a map of that next week. Who knows? I'm still kind of digesting what I should actually share prophetically, because we could be fine. We could very well be in the state where we're in between the pharaohs who know us to the ones who don't, and now that being his people. And this could be the beginning of the second Exodus out of these places, right? We don't know. It starts with a great awakening. It starts with an identity awakening to where it becomes common knowledge, to where, I kind of envision that even through the Sunday morning pulpits, they're saying, we're his people, and that there's no longer dispensations preached from the pulpits. That's going to be more identity, biblical identity, right? So that's fantastic that you mentioned that. I think it's great that I did make the observation as well that as the Egyptians were giving up their land through real estate transactions, and then their own souls being enslaved to, and this says,
Yes.
and then Pharaoh owned all of it. I didn't hear anything about Goshen in there, and perhaps if we dig a little deeper, maybe Goshen was just one of those provinces or those areas that were under, because it says the priests of Egypt didn't get up their land because they were already given
Right.
Pharaoh's portion. But
Right.
perhaps Goshen was under that special provision of like, well, don't have to give up Goshen because it's already under maybe royal control, or the Pharaoh's court. But you saw that the Israelites weren't suffering through those things like the Egyptians
Yes.
were.
Right.
It's just kind of, I mean, again, it's also maybe kind of like another foreshadowing of when the plagues came in, right? The plagues. There's only a few of the plagues that the Israelites experienced, and the latter 7, they didn't seem to be affected by them, and that was all because they were still there in Goshen.
Yes.
So there's something there. There's something there about there's a connection with Goshen and the United States being the safe haven. It has been a safe haven for a few hundred years, like Egypt was a safe haven for a few hundred years. And then there comes a time where it's no longer, and it's time for us to go home. So who knows? I'm not saying that there's no need to build a doctrine or saying, oh, this is what it is. It's just an observation, perhaps.
Yeah.
And then so before we end here, we do have Lena making another comment about evolutionary thinking, and she says she is getting this. So I guess Zafania, that answers our question that our definitions of linear and cyclical, as we're just now kind of helping define some of this in all humility. We're just saying this is what we've observed. Evolutionary thinking is change all things. Yah's thinking is to restore all things. Pretty much, yeah. And turning back, she's referencing here Hosea 14 of making shuv, or to return, to repent, is to return from your ways, and that is definitely the word of the hour here, as we're turning from our ways, and we're looking at what we've inherited. We've inherited lies. So I'll end with this: Ezekiel 37. Verses 15 through, I think, roughly 19 or so, I'm going to read. It says here, the word of Jehovah came to me. This is Ezekiel being spoken to. And he says, Son of man, take a stick and write on it, for Yehuda for Judah, and the people of Israel associated with him. Then take another stick and write on it for Joseph, the stick of Ephraim, and all the house of Israel associated with him, and join them one to another into one stick, that they may become one in your hand. And when your people say to you, will you not tell us what you mean by these? Say to them, thus says Jehovah Elohim, behold, I am about to take the stick of Joseph that is in the hand of Ephraim, and the tribes of Israel associated with him, and I will join with it the stick of Judah, and make them one stick, and that they may become one in my hand. When the sticks on which you write are in your hand before their eyes, then you say to them, thus says Jehovah Elohim, behold, I will take the people of Israel from the nations which they have gone, and I gather them from all around, and I will bring them into their own land. And I will make them one nation in the land, on the mountains of Israel, and one king shall be king over them, and they shall no longer be two nations, and no longer divided into two kingdoms. They shall not defile themselves any more with their idols and their detestable things, or with any of their transgressions. But I will save them from all the backslidings in which they have sinned, and I will cleanse them, and they shall be my people, and I will be their Elohim. So we say hallelujah to that. That's obviously just a quick preview of that. And so I'll end with prayer here as we're winding down. So thank you, Abba in heaven. Baruch atah Yehovah. Blessed be Yehovah, our Heavenly Father, who has brought us out of so many Egypts, who's brought us out of so many different houses of bondage, that you have restored our identity as your people. And now that we've been multiplied and then scattered all over the planet, amongst all people groups, among all tongues and nations, that as we are being revealed to among ourselves, coming into identity, that now we are revealing ourselves to our brother Judah, that the Messiah dwelling in us, Yeshua dwelling in us, manifest, and that the works of the flesh and that the doctrines and the ideas and the opinions and the philosophies that we have held on to for so long from the nations, that we truly can cry out, like it's written in Jeremiah 16, that we've truly inherited lies and traditions that are of no use. And that as we are going forth, as our brother Zephaniah says, to not go to the extreme, to not throw everything out, but to truly examine what it is that we can have the mind of Messiah, that we can have the mind of Yeshua, and the heart to speak to those who are in need. That we are to gather the lost sheep of the house of Israel. And as we know, we can't gather the lost sheep of the house of Israel with bitterness, with envy and jealousy, with anger, with wrath, with any of these things that are from the other kingdom. So I pray for those listening and watching and perhaps sharing this. May it be a prophetic confirmation that we cannot become we can't become one nation with the root of bitterness, as it says in Hebrews 12, the root of bitterness that can defile us. That we no longer look upon each other with contempt, with contempt. That we no longer look at each other with envy and jealousy. No longer harassing one another over doctrinal things. That we can truly embrace one another. And I pray a covering and a blessing for those who have gone through personally, being joined to family members among these holiday times that the world calls holidays, that you may overturn them into these gatherings, that they be opportunities for your love and for your spirit to move and to dwell, and for there to be just an awakening, as a continued awakening. And I just ask you this to bless our brother Zephaniah and Brian and all those watching. And thank you for those watching, and bless them, and bless who may be watching the recap, that you may give us all continued revelation into the knowledge of your Son, Yeshua. In Yeshua's name, amen.
Amen.
All right. Well, that will end. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. And
Shabbat shalom.
wherever you're at, whatever time zone you're in, have a great week. And
Shabbat shalom.
we will see you next week. So I'll end the live stream here. And gentlemen, if you can stay